Welcome back to another episode of the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Willert, and I'm sitting here with Pastor Mike Wigglesworth. We have a fun episode for you guys today, but before we jump into that, and I toss over to Mike to describe what we're doing, let us get into the coffee we are drinking. Mike, what do you have for us today?
Today I have coffee from Kenya. It's Atlas coffee I'm drinking today, and it is wonderful.
Nice.
Yes.
I went back to the good old cinnamon bun. I have to finish that off.
Wonderful.
Not a cinnamon bun. And I have it in the old school caffeinated Christian mug. You remember I made those?
The old school logo. I still have it on my shelf over here in my office.
I feel like I have
Christian
four
mug.
of them still downstairs somewhere.
Do you?
Somewhere.
Nice.
I think it was a deal. Like if you get like 10, if you get like 1 to 10 or whatever it is, you get $3 off per cup. I can't remember.
Man.
That was a good time.
And so can I just say one other thing before we get into today's topic? My brother-in-law, John, I think he gets my sense of humor pretty well. We share very similar senses of humor.
Yeah.
And he sent me this picture that I think is absolutely hilarious. It's a screenshot of a text that a pastor received from one of his congregants. And here's what the text said. It starts with *67. Hey, Pastor, just wanted to let you know that the message you preached last Sunday didn't make a lick of sense. Also, your tie was hideous. And the pastor responds, Karen, you know that *67 only works with phone calls.
Ouch. Ouch.
So I laughed out loud when I heard that. So, John, if you're listening, thank you for sending that. That kind of made my day.
Yeah, Mike, you need to forward that to me. I want to forward that to the group that we'll be having the discussion with tonight. I think that'd be some comic relief before we go in.
Oh yeah, I'll send that to you. You share it with the group. It's just great.
That's great.
Well, and so why don't we get into what we're going to be talking about today?
Yep.
So Ryan and I were talking probably 3-4 weeks ago, maybe even longer than that now, about having a debate about the existence of intelligent life. Aliens in our universe. And so maybe you've seen a documentary, maybe you've seen like a Nat Geo documentary about the pyramids. Were they created by aliens? How were they so sophisticated as a society to have built something so advanced? And you know, maybe you've had some good-natured debates with people about whether or not aliens actually exist. We are going to be doing this mock debate. It's nothing official. Ryan holds to the conviction that there likely is no intelligent life in our universe. I hold to the belief that there is, but these are disputable matters. We don't really care either way. Whether or not intelligent life outside of our planet exists doesn't really affect anything that's really important to us. But we thought it'd be fun to have a little good-natured debate and give you our reasons for why we hold the views that we do. All right?
Love it.
All right. And so, here we go. If you've ever looked up at the night sky and felt small, welcome to being human and taking step into understanding your proper place in this world, right? I believe part of our thriving as human beings necessitates that we embrace mystery. That we embrace the mystery of God, that we embrace the mystery around the wonders of his creation. And the reality is there is so much mystery in this universe. It is vast, it is, let's be honest, a little terrifying. And yet there is belief among many that Earth is the only place with intelligent life. And now, do I believe we could make the argument that Earth is the only planet that contains life with the stamp of the divine image on it? Possibly. I think that raises a whole host of other questions. But what I'd like to do is take a moment to provide 8 compelling reasons why I believe alien life is not just possible, but also maybe even probable. Number one is something that nobody is going to argue with, is the sheer size of the universe. So imagine standing in Times Square on New Year's Eve, and you're looking for your friend who promised to wear a red hat. All right, and now go ahead and multiply that by 1 trillion. And that's what searching for alien life feels like. Right? The universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies and potentially 100 quintillion planets. If Earth were the only place with life, it would be like filling an entire Costco with scratch-off lottery tickets and only printing one winner. It's not just improbable, it borders, I think, on absurdity. The second point is what's known as the Drake equation. Astrophysicist Frank Drake, he developed an equation to estimate the number of intelligent civilizations in the Milky Way. Even with conservative guesses, the math would suggest that there should be dozens to thousands of civilizations out there. Okay, so again, that brings up the possibility that intelligent life exists. 3 are the exoplanets in the habitable zone, also known as the Goldilocks zone. And these are places where conditions could support liquid water. That means we've found plenty of planets that aren't too hot, aren't too cold, or made entirely out of gas that smells like rotten eggs. Let's just be honest, right? Now, given these discoveries, it seems increasingly likely that life is out there, just waiting for us to finally develop a telescope good enough to actually see it. 4 is extremophiles on Earth. Some of the Earth's most resilient creatures are extremophiles. These are organisms that thrive in acid lakes, nuclear reactors, deep sea hydrothermal vents. If life can survive in these hellscapes, why not an alien planet with similar conditions? 5 is what's known as the Fermi paradox. And the Fermi paradox asks the question, why haven't we seen aliens yet? So physicist Enrico Fermi famously asked, where is everybody? If intelligent life is out there, why haven't we made contact? And so there are several possible answers to this question. I'm just going to lay out 4 of them for you. 1 is what's known as the zoo hypothesis. So in this scenario, we're the exhibit, aliens are watching us like a reality show, and I just find that picture hilarious. I don't think it's true, but I find it hysterical. Like tonight on Humans Gone Wild, Florida man is at it again, and
It's like
he's
some
wrestling an
weird Rick
alligator.
and Morty episode.
I know.
Yeah.
He's wrestling an alligator again, and will he come out with all of his appendages? Let's find out. There's also the great filter. Civilizations may self-destruct before actually achieving interstellar travel. There's also the possibility of wrong timing. Like maybe we're too early or we're too late, kind of like showing up after a party is already over and everyone's already left, or showing up before it's even begun. And there's also the reality of different communication methods. We're looking for radio waves, but aliens might be using technology that's beyond our capabilities, kind of like the difference between yelling and texting. Okay, and number 6 is the UFO and UAP, meaning unidentified aerial phenomena, that evidence and government disclosures. Governments have released declassified reports, and some objects have exhibited flight patterns and speeds beyond human capabilities. Think of a fighter jet trying to keep up with the Tesla that's suddenly able to teleport. And what I find compelling in this is that if military pilots who are trained to identify aircrafts keep saying, yeah, we don't know what that was, maybe it's time we pay attention to that. And 7 are the ancient and historical accounts. Ancient civilizations would often depict beings from the sky. For example, the Dogon tribe in Africa had advanced astronomical knowledge supposedly passed down by star visitors, excuse me. The Nazca lines in Peru resemble giant landing strips. Ancient texts from Sumerian records, and some argue, I don't hold
Mike froze everyone. Mike, we might have to edit this out.
this belief. Some would argue biosignatures. These are chemical markers that indicate life in exoplanet atmospheres. So discoveries like phosphine in Venus, organic molecules on Mars, water plumes on Europa, these suggest that life may already exist elsewhere. So in my belief, the universe is too big, probabilities are too high, and the evidence is too compelling to dismiss the possibility of intelligent life. Science supports the probability of extraterrestrial life. Governments have admitted that UFOs or UADs exist and defy explanation. Historical accounts suggest we may have been visited before, and the absence of contact does not mean aliens aren't out there. It just means that we might be using the wrong method to reach them.
Sure.
So, are we alone in the universe? I'd say probably not. And if aliens are out there, let's hope they're friendly, because if they've been watching us, they might be very disappointed in how we've been running things down here.
Mike, I'm disappointed in how we're running things down here.
I know, me too.
So no, so I'm going to give my point of view. I do have responses to all of your statements.
I knew you would.
Yeah, especially some of these Drake equations and Fermi paradoxes. You and I are going to agree on 90% of what you said.
Oh, come
I
on, that's no
just don't,
fun.
I just don't necessarily think it points to your conclusion, because I think there's other conclusion that actually gives us that information as well. When you study these empirical sort of investigation of natural explanations, right? We know historically that there are different types of kinds, and if you of UFO reports, sort of occurrences happening to people, right? And you read the attempt to understand these through natural explanations, you find out real fast that a large percentage of these can be explained through natural explanations. Even the UFO Encyclopedia asserts this, quote unquote, it is important to note that over 90%, possibly 95% of UFO reports received are turned into IFOs, which mean identified flying objects, and explained satisfactory. Most UFOologists that I've studied would make the statistic to be 99% of all of these situations transfer from UFO to IFO. Now, the question is, what do we do with the 1%? Right? I think we both agree on this.
For sure.
Something extremely weird is happening in this world. The question is, how do we look at these? Well, in the literature, there's two explanations for this residual, or the RUFOs, residual UFOs, the leftover, that 1%, right? And the two working hypotheses that we find in the literature up to today are what is called the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Sort of UFOs are these objective physical objects, creatures from other planets as we see in the media and on movies, right? It's
Mhm.
these clanging metal, iron spaceships flying across the universe.
Mhm.
Or the interdimensional hypothesis.
Mhm.
And where these are real phenomenon happening, they exhibit physical empirical effects, but they belong to a different reality behind space and time.
Mhm.
I agree with you, Mike, that something weird is happening.
Mhm.
Extremely weird. I think there is other life in this universe, but I
Mhm.
do not think it falls into the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Okay.
So if you want to say, hey, all these weird things are happening with the pyramids, all these flight people are seeing these things, basically half of your categories, I'm going to go, I 100% think those are real. And so I'm going to argue that they fit better within the interdimensional hypothesis versus the extra dimensional hypothesis. And so let me give you two reasons, arguments why I don't think the extraterrestrial hypothesis works. I think it is extremely implausible for other inhabitable locations in the universe. And I'm not just talking about the idea of what they say, hey, we found a habitable planet or a habitable zone or a habitable region. As Dr. Zwaring points out, habitable refers only to the capacity to contain water or has water. It has nothing to do with if a planet meets all of the other requirements.
Mhm.
So just because it has the possibility of having water, or in a good galaxy that has water, it needs to not only fit extreme planetary requirements, but also extreme galactic requirements in order for a planet to contain. Um, but the question is, what are these requirements needed? Well, you're going to find out that the only kind of element that could produce creatures like us are overall, the majority of chemists, carbon-based.
Mhm.
And I can give you reasons why silicon doesn't work. I can give you reasons why boron doesn't work, even though they're the closest elements that chemists look to. So it is almost universally agreed on. Even Robert Dicke, a chemist and a physicist, states this: if one wants physicists, they must be carbon-based. And so if things and creatures such as extraterrestrial hypothesis needs to be carbon based, there are certain requirements on planets in order to produce the kind of intelligent carbon based creatures that we know of. And I know, Mike, I sent you a list of them before.
Yep.
This is from Hugh Ross and Kenneth Samples. He's a astrophysicist that he looks at the planetary. So far, they've produced 153 necessary parameters that is required. And let me give you the quote that he gives. The probability of a planet anywhere in the universe fitting within all 153 parameters is approximately 10 to the negative 93rd power. The maximum number of planets in the universe is estimated to be 10 to the 22nd power. So even if it goes to 10 to the 50th, it's still an ungodly amount. You can just do the math. Thus, less than one chance in 10 to the 172 power. That's 100,000 trillion, 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 trillion. In one chance that exists, there is another planet outside in the universe. And that is so low given to how many planets in this exponential power equation that actually exist out there. So
Mhm.
I think it's extremely implausible to have planets knowing the necessities of intelligent life that we have out there. Now, you could assume with ad hoc assumptions that maybe life is something else that we don't know of. That's fine. We just don't have evidence of it. So
Mhm.
I can't tell you no. I'm just saying I'm just basing my argument off of the evidence, right? Also, I think the ability to space travel long distances and at top speeds is so implausible. To think they've come from another galaxy, which has to be the case according to physicists,
Mhm.
the amount of time it would take to travel would just be insane to think about.
Mhm.
Um, would you like me to give you some of the statistics when it comes to
Sure.
that? Sure.
Lay them. Lay them on me.
Yeah. So let's just do some fun statistics here. If you look at the Milky Way galaxy, it's roughly 100,000 light years across. The Andromeda galaxy, which is the closest to the Milky Way, is 2.5 million light years away. Now, that's insane when it comes to a light year. Now, to give you a idea on the speed, Mike, I gave you this beforehand. In
Yeah.
1977, NASA launched Voyager 1, and it basically took 3 years to travel and took photos of Jupiter and Saturn and their moons, and then it was thrown into interstellar space, which is where the solar winds of the sun no longer dominate from other stars out there.
Mhm.
So in 2012, many, many decades later, hit interstellar space, which is roughly 11 billion miles away. And it still holds the record as the fastest spaceship today moving away from the sun at 11 miles per second or 38,000 miles per hour, which is insane to think about,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
It will take to reach the next nearest star in our galaxy, which most physicists say you have to go outside our galaxy to find this planets because we haven't found anything that meet these requirements within our galaxy. Is Proxima Centauri 4.225 light years away. It will take at this speed of the fastest moving away, it will take 80,000 years just to reach the next star. Like, that's crazy to think about. The next nearest
Mhm.
gas giant is 50 light years away. It'll take Voyager 1 over 900,000 miles. And the nearest planet that doesn't meet the requirements that we know of is 4.2 light years away, which is 83,000 years of travel at this speed. Um, we know if something has mass and if it needs to be carbon based, it cannot go the speed of light because it's just mathematically impossible with Einstein's relativity because it would need an infinite amount of speed, which, as we've argued, I don't think infinites can exist. And since speed of light is out, since it's carbon based, Hugh Ross writes, given relativity at the velocity of light, the energy required to move a specific mass is infinite, even at half the velocity of light. Half of it. The energy
Mhm.
needed to propel an object is 170 million times greater than NASA's fastest spacecraft.
Mhm.
And so remember, the Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years across, which is if Voyager went about 10% of the speed of light, it would need 67 million miles per hour. At 50% of the speed of light, it would travel over 335 million miles per hour. And as a lot of the physicists out there, like Jeff Swearing and all these people, estimate if it's going to be carbon based without basically destroying the creature or the craft, it can only go at the velocity of 1% of the speed of light.
Mhm.
And so that would require, like, think about that. Generations and generations and generations, big ship, food, oxygen, air, all the requirements that we know of. And that doesn't even get into the amount of trillions of joules and millions of tons of gas or oil would need to transport. I mean, you're talking about could be hundreds of generations to get to where we know might exist to where we are. So I don't think it's very plausible. Now, let me say something else, Mike, because we can talk
Hmm.
about wormholes and black holes and all that stuff.
Sure.
If you look at the R UFO, which you and I agree with, something weird is happening.
Absolutely.
100 thinks something weird is very happening. If you look at the characteristics of these R UFOs, they don't match the characteristics of the extra hypothesis. It matches the interdimensional hypothesis. Let me give you these characteristics that Dr. Wilkinson points out. Are you ready for this? It's kind of creepy. Some of these that fall into the RF UFOs. He lists 12. I'll go on real fast. They leave no physical artifacts even after crashing, generate no sonic boom even when recording speeds of breaking the sound barrier, with no physical resistance,
Hmm.
seen but often cannot be detected by radar or any form of detection, physically impossible turns, sudden stops, speeds reaching 15,000 miles per hour from nothing. We don't have a form of energy that can do that on our planet that we know of. Um, Hover over trees without any wind movement, no downward push or movement in any of the ambient air currents, change shape, size, color in an instant, suddenly disappear and reappear, disintegrate and regenerate out of nothing, emits light but without shadows, enters the ground without leaving a trace, melts without heat, and this is what's crazy. There are examples, Mike, that at least physical marks that science cannot explain. Let me give you one example that many people have recorded that farmers have recorded they planted new plant life and this
Hmm.
thing appeared over the plants
Hmm.
and they went back afterwards and the plants had the appearance of many years of age and grew different heights and they physically tested the property of these plant materials of the
Hmm.
new plants that were planted and they have proof of this
Hmm.
and it showed in its physical properties very old age.
Hmm.
It's kind of creepy to think about it. Um, and so I I I'm gonna stop there
Sure.
because I have some other arguments and stuff like that. But I figure it'd be fun to have more of a conversation when it comes to reasons that we had. But I
Yeah.
will say one more thing. When you look at the information of the occult, such as the abductees and contactees, the high percentage of these R UFOs fall within these people, and the things they claim that they experience fits these interdimensional beings when it comes to what is happening. And all the physical marks, such as you've presented in half your categories, can also be explained by the interdimensional hypothesis.
Yeah. So for you, just to clarify, there's a supernatural component that is taking place here,
Yeah, so
not
I would,
aliens.
yeah, I would argue as a Christian
Hmm.
that the supernatural, since I think, and I argue naturalism's false. And if naturalism's false, then there's more than just nature that's happening that we understand as naturalism. I would argue that there are quote unquote supernatural type things that have a
Hmm.
play in this world that can exhibit real and physical effects on people and creation all around us and are intelligent. My gosh, Mike, when you study
Hmm.
the change in information given by these creatures, it's unbelievable the characteristics that we find when you dive into this, where these people
Hmm.
are aware of us, they know us, their science changes, their location changes, and they can't keep the story straight. Most of them talk about Jesus, which
Hmm.
is very interesting. And so I think if this is the case, the interdimensional hypothesis explains all of these details way better than the extra dimensional hypothesis.
Interesting.
Yep.
So let me just provide a few counter arguments to some of the points that you made. I won't you know, be able to give a fully orbed response to everything that you said, but just some things that I think are worth talking about a little bit more. One is that you mentioned that these UFO sightings are often explained by natural phenomena. And you're right that UFO sightings have been explained, but others still, of
For like
course,
blimps, aircrafts, fireworks, stuff like that. Yeah.
right, of course.
Solar glares. Yeah.
And you also have to consider the fact that people are having a mental episode and they're not seeing something that comports with anybody else's reality as well.
Yeah. Hallucinations, seizures, that happens all the time.
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah. But like we said, there's government release footage that shows objects moving in ways beyond human technology, which you agree with. Stuff that
100%.
doesn't have wings, no
100%.
propulsion, speeds that defy physics. Obviously,
It's creepy.
even what's that?
It's creepy.
It is really creepy.
Yeah.
It's seasoned military pilots admitting they have no idea what they're seeing.
Hmm.
And so obviously, and we would agree with this too, that when trained professionals are baffled, we have to take this phenomena really seriously, right?
Yeah.
I mean, whatever these beings are, whether they're within our dimension or outside of our dimension, they have better cloaking technology than Star Trek fans ever dreamed of. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, and
Um,
to that, Mike, and I know I'm taking up your point.
no, you're
If the
fine.
interdimensional hypothesis is right, these creatures can pop in and out of our dimensions with nothing. So when they
Sure.
say this thing randomly
Sure.
disappeared in front of me, it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, sure. Like if it has this ability because of this kind of nature it is,
Hmm.
um, I wouldn't be shocked that it would and could do that kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
For sure. For sure. So, so anyway, there's that element, and that's really not an argument. That's just an additional thought to what you shared.
yeah,
But in response to the implausibility of other habitable locations, I just want to give a few points on that.
sure.
The argument against intelligent life elsewhere, it often hinges on the idea that Earth is uniquely habitable. Like you said, to have a carbon-based life form on another planet, I mean, that's a very unique qualifier, right? And no other planets meet all the necessary conditions for life. But I do think this position, and maybe you can just
Clarify.
expound on this a little bit more after I make these points. I do think that this position can overlook some key considerations. It's number one is the unknown factor, is
Sure.
that scientists haven't yet discovered an exact Earth twin, of course, but the search has also just begun. Right, the observable universe contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars, hundreds of billions of planets, and vast numbers. And the statistical probability of Earth being the only habitable planet seems to be exceedingly low to me.
Sure.
Two are exoplanet discoveries, like I talked about in my previous point, is the term habitable in scientific discourse is it often refers to the potential for liquid water,
Sure.
not an exact Earth replica.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that no planet could sustain life. Like there's exoplanet research that's still in its infancy with the James Webb telescope, and these things are just beginning to analyze atmospheres for these particular biosignatures. Three is diverse life possibilities. So the assumption that life has to be carbon based and require Earth like conditions, I think, is also kind of limiting. And I know this is hypothetical and this is in the realm of
Sure.
mystery. I get
Yeah.
that. But extremophiles on Earth thrive in these deep sea vents, acid lakes, radioactive environments. But I think that if life can adapt to such extreme conditions here, is it at least possible that extraterrestrial life could evolve under different planetary conditions? Like I said, I could be totally wrong on that. But that's the third point, and then four is future discoveries. So the claim that no planet meets Earth's requirements kind of can ignore the fact that the vast majority of the universe remains, again, unexplored. So the
Yeah.
Milky Way has over 100 billion planets with new habitable candidates discovered on a fairly frequent basis. And
Yeah.
so those are just some of the thoughts that arise out of that implausibility argument that you raised. But
Yeah.
feel free to
Would
respond to that.
Yeah, so I think it's good thoughts and it's good to think about this stuff, right?
Sure.
And so I agree to a certain extent on your thoughts here.
Okay.
Um, and a lot of my information and my argument would reside in the fact of what we know, not necessarily what we can't know, right? But I don't think a good argument resides on going, well, it's possible, right? Because all I have to argue back would be like, well, maybe it's not possible,
Right.
right?
That's fair.
And I think what I would do is going like, well, given the statistics that we know, I at least have these statistics to lean the is it possible or not possible more in my camp.
Yeah.
Um, and I do agree there is an unknown factor that we need to change with the evidence.
Hmm.
But to that, I have a few points I want to offer. The first is this: the more and more evidence that gets revealed continuously over the centuries and
Hmm.
decades and discoveries always seem to conclude to the fact and point more to the probability of the interdimensional hypothesis is the one over the other
Hmm.
one.
Hmm.
And so I think I like new evidence coming out.
Sure.
I just do because I think it favors this hypothesis.
Mhm.
Um, and once again, it says I think there's real things happening. I think there's other creatures out there. I just don't think they traveled from other planets. Now you have something about exoplanet discoveries. Now, one of the things that I think Hugh Ross, the physicist and cosmologist Jeff Zering points out is one of the important things we need to recognize is it's not just the fact that we find other planets that meet 40 conditions. What they
Hmm.
point out is if a thing needs to be carbon based, which is the only elements we know of so far,
Hmm.
because the other two closest one fail in many important regards. It's not just it needs to meet 51%. It has to meet all 153 necessarily. And so I love the fact that there's extra planet discoveries. I even have on the slides I sent you a brief history of it, right?
Hmm. Sure.
But none of them, even if they meet 149,
Hmm.
it's not going to fit the criteria necessary for the carbon-based life.
Sure.
So, from what I have read so far, most people agree with this fact, and that's why I put it down that
Hmm.
it needs to meet all of these requirements,
Hmm.
which is very, very hard. And so far, we have not found any that meet all of these requirements. That's not to say we can't find any, but that goes to my second point, right? um, that even if we do find something in another galaxy, all we can conclude is we found a planet.
Hmm.
We now have to argue they got to us. You see what I'm saying? And
Sure.
so I don't
Sure.
even care if you say we found another planet and 50 trillion light years away. Congratulations. How did they get here? Because something real is happening.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And a lot of these people might argue that there is less the galaxy is younger than how long it would take them to get to us.
I
Which
see
is
what
a
you're
very
saying.
and especially if these galaxies are moving apart from our galaxy, the ability to get to us is going to be more difficult
The universe is expanding
as
by a lot
time
of
goes
people's
on. Yeah.
estimations, for sure.
And diverse
Hmm.
life possibilities. One of the things I've noticed, and I could be corrected on this, but one of the things that stuck out to
Hmm.
me was it's not just that you need to life is formed in weird conditions. I agree, right? I think our Earth is weird and
Hmm.
we formed, right? But it's not just the fact that it formed in weird conditions. There are particular necessary conditions required prior in order for life to form. So it's not just that life just fits the conditions, right? Most conditions need to be there prior for life to even fit the conditions. And that's where I think the 153 parameters makes a good distinction there. But I agree with you. I don't know.
Hmm.
All I can say is given the information we have,
Yeah.
something is here, something is real,
Hmm.
um, and something is weird that is happening.
Sure.
And so far, what we know of points to the fact that the interdimensional hypothesis is what we should believe. Um, but I
Right.
think all of your thoughts toward it are good thoughts. And I just don't like to go, we don't know, and that's my argument. I like to go, what do we know? And then if time changes, we switch our conclusion, right?
Sure.
Um, but given these experiences
Hmm.
that many UFOologists write down, I mean, it's creepy
Hmm.
of what these characteristics that don't fit any natural explanation or any
Sure.
explanation that we know of physical beings or things can do. I really think it points to the fact that it's interdimensional, as well as the two arguments I presented. And I think naturalism's false. I have lots of reasons why I think that's false. So I think the ability for other dimensional
Mhm.
beings to be real is highly plausible, if that makes sense. Oh, you froze again. Give it a second.
Yeah. Hold
Oh, you're
on.
back.
Yeah.
Now can I
Yeah. You
respond?
froze too.
I respond to two of your things. if I
Sure.
may. The
Sure.
two biggest things I want to discuss is, well, one, the size of the universe. I agree with that. A lot of people bring in the multiverse idea, and I've yet to be persuaded by any multiverse arguments.
Yeah, I'm not arguing for that.
Anything like what Jeff Swearing brought on, I think
Sure.
Multiverse 2, where there's more beyond our observable universe, if that's what you mean by multiverse. I think inflation shows that to be true. I don't think the universe is infinite. I don't think an infinites exist in reality. But I don't necessarily think the size of the universe is convincing to me.
Okay.
Um, I think what you need is I actually think the size of the universe could be anti a reverse argument. The bigger and more the universe is, and we discover, and the less
Hmm.
we find, I
Mhm.
think could be an argument to the fact that leans to we might not find it.
All right.
You
All
know what
right.
I mean?
Fair enough.
Is the fact that it's so big, there ought to be something out there. I don't know why there's like this ought principle on it. I've never got really a sound argument for that.
Hmm.
Now the Drake equation, let's talk about that. I'm not going to go into the history of it.
Sure.
Actually, one of my work for listeners, there is the actual equation right there, and there is all of the
Yeah.
requirements for all of
I
the.
reference it. I have no idea what it means.
Yeah, it's very so.
I'm not gonna try to understand it.
Yeah, let me read you some if I can for our listeners, Mike. We get this from Dr. Wilkinson. Let me just read you this paragraph that he writes. It's going to be mind blowing, but let me just read you it. This is a very difficult equation to use due to the factors which enter into it. Now, he argues that it's an agenda versus actual calculation in his work. And a lot of scientists argue this.
So he's coming to it with a predetermined thought in
No,
mind.
so
What do you mean by that?
he's looked at it because it's from the founder of SETI, which is the search for
Yep.
extraterrestrial intelligence from Frank
Yep.
Drake, uh,
Right.
basically in the 60s, and he lays out for our YouTube basically I'm going to give this equation that he just made up. I'm going to be honest with you, if you study history, he just made it up. Um, and here's all the what the symbols are and what they mean, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so he talks about a lot of these symbols, for instance, like the rate of formation of stars per year suitable to develop for intelligent life. It's established observable. Like, we can look and establish these particular things. He goes, it is therefore not surprising that different people do. Sorry, let me read this. The other factors are beyond current observations, even till today. So there's few
Sure.
observations that we can know, but a lot of these other ones, he literally inputs the number off of what he thinks historically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he goes, it is no, therefore not surprising that different people derive widely different results out of such an equation. At Drake's meeting, the product of the first six factors were optimistically assumed to be one, meaning there has to be, reducing the equation to n equals L. But even then, we have the estimate of lifetime in advanced civilization. Drake estimated L to be 1,000 to 100 million years, and therefore there were probably between 1,000 and a million civilizations in the galaxy. A few years later, other scholars such as Sagan inserted different values to be 10 million, thus giving n to about 1 million. Others produced the numbers to just be one, meaning us. And so other
Very
scholars go
arbitrary.
like, we're the only one. And so the Frank Drake equation in part is from observation. The other, in reality,
Mhm.
we don't have any observations to prove the sort of numbers he puts into the equation. And
Sure.
I've read a lot of scholars that agree with that conclusion. So,
Sure.
which is very fascinating. The other is the Fermi paradox.
Uh-huh.
Um, the Fermi paradox, let me read you a little bit about it if I can. I get this from Dr. Webb, who offers 50 counter arguments why we shouldn't believe the Fermi paradox
Hmm.
in his writing. The Fermi paradox
Right.
appears at first glance to be compelling, but is not without problems of challenges. Of course, there are those who would object immediately to the statement there's no compelling evidence that aliens have visited the Earth, which we disagree with. We think there is.
Hmm.
Others will argue that some factor makes galactic colonization extremely unlikely. And so let me just give you three that Webb gives that I find interesting.
Hmm.
First, the arguments say that extraterrestrials are here, such as there is evidence, but it is a cover-up. We are descended from aliens, or that the aliens see on Earth as a zoo and do not want to meddle in human affairs, right?
Right.
Which is, can't prove that right or wrong.
No, there's no way we could possibly prove
We
that.
can't
It's all
prove half the
theoretical.
stuff, right?
No.
Second, the arguments that extraterrestrial exists but have some yet have not yet communicated because they are too far away. That SETI has been searching in the wrong places that the aliens have no desire to communicate.
Hmm.
And so what a lot of scholars point out is the problem is SETI, which has been around and spent millions and millions, tens and tens of millions of dollars, have literally found nothing.
Hmm.
And a lot of scholars point out is SETI is assuming a lot of things, right? First, it's assuming that there is. Second, it's assuming that these civilizations exist
Hmm.
in the present versus past or future.
Sure.
And third, they're assuming that they can even understand that what we're sending out is a signal for them to respond to.
Well, that
They're,
they have the technology to respond to it.
or they have the technology, or that they
That's
want to have the technology. And we're
right.
wasting how much of the taxpayers' money now privately funded on these random assumptions? And
Hmm.
so when you look at all of these
Right.
things, I just do not find the evidence plausibly pointing to that there are physical creatures elsewhere in the universe that has
Mhm.
already reached us. But Mike, I think there's something happening around us, and
That
as
we
a,
could totally agree on.
it's demonic.
Yeah.
And so it's funny. I have a lot of these conversations with people, and I did a talk
Mhm.
on this at the church, and it's I think a Christian from
Mhm.
my standing, I can look at these people who disagree with me and think there's other Aarons out there, and I go, listen, we're so close to agreeing on everything.
Mhm.
We literally, all of this evidence, yeah, I love it. Bring it to me. I
Yeah.
agree. Something is happening.
Mhm.
I just am not convinced
Yeah.
that something extraplanetary can exist or has existed that because we don't have evidence for it or could even reach us if it did. But
Mhm.
I also agree on 90% of what you said here, where like, yeah, like it's weird. Something is
Mhm.
happening.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And that we could 100% agree on. Now, can we just briefly talk about, you talked about the improbability of them actually getting here, which,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, highly improbable. Can I just lay out a few things that might be worth us discussing
Yeah,
when we're
absolutely.
talking about the impossibility of interstellar travel?
And I
So,
don't know everything, Mike, so it's good to have these conversations,
yeah,
right?
yes, and neither do I. That's
Yeah.
why I like having these conversations. So there's the argument that the vast distances between stars make space travel not just implausible, but just in your estimation, right? Impossible. You laid out the numbers a little bit earlier in our conversation.
Yeah, very, very difficult.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like it would take them the amount of time that the galaxy has actually existed, right? But now that objection assumes that current human technological limitations apply universally to all intelligent
Sure.
civilizations, assuming
Yeah.
they exist, right? So, one point that comes to mind for me is technological progression, just for our society, right?
Sure.
120 years ago, powered flight was considered impossible, but within a century, humans landed on the moon. You could extrapolate from this an advanced civilization with
Sure.
a million year head start could have propulsion technologies that are far beyond our comprehension. And now that raises the question of why haven't we seen them come here or have definitive evidence that they're here, right? The second is alternative propulsion methods, right? You have chemical rockets, and those are inefficient for interstellar travel. You laid this out pretty clearly, Ryan. Other potential methods could exist, including nuclear fusion, antimatter propulsion, laser sail technology. There's very theoretical concepts like I'm going to try to pronounce this as best as I can, the Alcubierre drive, which would manipulate space time and it would allow faster than light travel without violating relativity. Again,
Sure.
that's theoretical, of course, but
Sure.
that's also something. There's also generation ships and AI exploration. So even without faster than light travel, interstellar migration is a feasible thing through vessels that sustain multiple generations of travelers or through advanced AI probes that could be sent ahead to terraform or prepare new worlds. And I realize all of this is theoretical. This is not actual technology that exists. So this isn't something that's going to be compelling for you. I just like talking about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And then four is just, again, observational bias.
Sure.
The idea that no civilization could have visited us assumes that they would leave undeniable evidence, right? However, an
Yeah.
advanced civilization could have ethical or observational or technological reasons for avoiding detection. Um, so anyway, there's some other thoughts that came to mind.
Yeah, so let's talk about the observational bias. I think the interdimensional hypothesis explains that. I think these
Sure.
creatures might have
Yeah.
different morals to explain why they haven't done certain things or different reasons why they haven't revealed themselves to certain types of people.
I was going to say that, but they don't share our moral values.
Yeah, exactly. They could do whatever they want to do. And if the Christianity is right, they have to, as we see in Job, stand before someone that allows them to do particular things and doesn't allow to do particular things. They aren't free to do whatever they want to do. They have to be allowed. Um, but that's just from a Christian standpoint. So I agree with you. Observation of bias.
For sure.
It's absolutely. Who says they have their own moral thing? In fact, if you look at the reports from the
Hmm.
UFOologists, they lie to people throughout the
Hmm.
centuries. That just proves they know what they're
Hmm.
doing. We know in the early 60s, they told people they're from the
Sure.
moon. And then once we could discover the moon, they were from the dark side of the moon. And once we went around the moon, guess where they're not from anymore? They're from Mars. Since we visited Mars,
Mhm.
guess what they're not from
Yep.
anymore? They continue to change get based off of modern scientific
Yeah.
evidence that we have proven. Talk about freaking
Sure.
liars. You know what I mean? So when it comes to tech progression, I think you're right. It's not really persuasive to me. The like, what if, right? I could be like, what if
Yeah.
possible magic exists on their planet that they could bewitch and wiggle
Right.
their nose
Hmm.
that doesn't affect relativity that we don't know of. Like, okay. Um, alternate propulsion methods. I think it's possible. Um, I would need other propulsion methods evidentially that we could possibly know on a planet that could produce carbon-based creatures. Um, I also think Hugh
But did
Ross.
you see that documentary that came out 10 years ago called Interstellar? Like, did you watch that?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, they're little. They're that he. Don't get me started on the weird time travel theory that completely ruined the ending for me. So, uh, yeah, even Sarah. I had Sarah watch that literally a month
I
ago, and
fell asleep during that movie.
she goes at the end, really like dimensional time travel. She goes, "This is stupid." Like, there's so many, and she started listing the problems that would happen. That's why I don't think time travel is a real thing. It's just not a real thing to me.
Yeah.
There's so many paradoxes
Yeah.
and circularities that would happen. But tech progressions, right? And I think Hugh Ross is right. And I've read a lot of other scientists. I want to find the source for you. I was kind of looking for it. That agree if it's carbon based, it can only go 1% of the speed of light without basically exploding. And so even if you found even if you found other methods, I think you're still limited according to what we know scientifically of how fast a carbon-based creature could go. Um,
Mhm.
and even if they could go 5% of the speed of light, you're still hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands
Sure.
of like years of travel. And so yeah, like I don't disagree. Is it possible? Yeah, sure. Like I think we're probably going to discover faster methods of traveling. But I mean like Mike, the what's the number? The hold on, let me give you the exact number. I have it written
Hmm.
down. Um, the Voyager 1, as I was talking about,
Yeah.
is at the 38,000 miles an hour, the fastest known thing we have using propulsion from like planetary gravity, not our own propulsion,
Hmm.
right? And our sun's huge. Um, our planets are huge. Is only 0.00057% of the speed of light.
It's going to be
To
a
do
long
this to
time.
1%, you know what
Yeah.
I mean, is
Sure.
crazy to think about. Um, I'm not saying it's theoretically impossible. I'm just saying it's very hard to imagine. And so if that's it just
Yeah.
resides implausible to me.
Sure.
And so, but if we live in the kind of world that Christians believe, there's things around us
Hmm.
all the time that are in different dimensions. And I think there are different dimensions exist according to relativity.
Sure.
How they folded up at the playing time to push out the
Yeah.
dimensions we're in. I think if that's the case, why couldn't these creatures that don't exist in the realm we do live in those kind of realms? I don't see anything wrong with that.
Right. And so if you saw a being that you know does not inhabit our world, right?
Mhm.
Your immediate explanation would be they came from a different dimension.
So I would say,
That would be the immediate explanation.
so what? Yeah, I would say that would be my immediate hypothesis.
Sure.
Yeah, where I would say, hey, given what I know and what I've studied, I would think I just saw something angelic or demonic. Um, and unless can proven otherwise, I wouldn't conclude the fact that something has reached us. And I also think you see imagery in scripture of what I mean, a lot of like crafts,
Hmm.
if understood. And I also think if these creatures aren't the kind of moral creatures we are, and we know they lie to us, we know they lie to us. And they could produce different types of images and take different shapes um, and inhabit certain characteristics. Why not lie to think we're not alone?
Hmm.
I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. What would stop them from doing that?
Yep.
Because they're good beings. That's not what we know from the evidence.
Right.
Um, and so I don't see any reason to think they wouldn't lie to us and give us images that are false, especially if certain religious world systems are correct. They would
Hmm.
want to deter us from that which is true of reality
And create confusion.
and
Right.
create confusion. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Hmm.
So yeah, I think once again, Mike, we are on the same page on 95% of everything we
Sure.
say. I
Hmm.
just think the evidence points to the fact that it's very hard for me to believe that they came from another planet.
Yeah. And that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. And I don't have sound evidence to prove that they did.
Yeah, right.
I
Exactly.
can't. We just don't have that information, right? And
Exactly.
so,
And once again, what's just funny is one of the arguments I made, say I'm right. Let's just
mhm.
hypothetically say I'm right. And SETI does get a signal from somewhere. What's to say that these creatures from another dimension haven't deliberately lied to send the signal back? I think SETI is in such an epistemological problem that
Mhm.
even if they did discover something, how do they know that it isn't a false thing if these creatures could do if these conclusions of what we're finding could do a type of thing that we're recording?
Mhm.
I don't think they could ever prove, even if they found something, that it was from another planet.
Sure. Sure.
I just don't
Yeah.
think they can. Or
Yeah.
if it's from another planet, it's still not interdimensional people.
Hmm.
So I think they're in such a problem that they can't. I don't know how they explain their hypothesis is true without already assuming it's true.
Well, we agree on 95% of things on this. And listeners, we hope you found this conversation enjoyable and fun. Please be sure to give us a rating and a review on our podcast. We would love to hear feedback from you. And please share, like, subscribe, and do whatever you need to do to get the word out there. Just click that button to share it and to subscribe to our channel. That helps immensely with visibility and it gets this channel out to more people. So be sure to do that. And as always, feel free to contact us, drop a comment or a like in the YouTube video. And also you can send us private messages on Facebook or Instagram. We would love to hear from you on future episode suggestions. And until next time, have a great day.